Okay. Awesome. So welcome everyone. Thrilled to have Mike here from PXG to do a live community call with the My Golf Spy Forum. We're just going to kick it right over to you, Mike, and let us know a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do with PXG, and a little bit about the professional career you've had as well.
Oh, sure. So, well, let's see. My official title here is Director of Irons Development at PXG, and I've been here since day one. So we've been here since let's see. I left Ping in 2013, and we're going on 10 years of producing product. But I've been with Bob for about 11 years now, and I knew Bob for about 2 years, probably before PXG ever, came to fruition. And anyway, we were friends and just happened to meet by chance one day at a golf course. And along the next couple of years, we played a number of rounds of golf, and I liked Bob and he liked me, and he decided that he had tried everything in the marketplace and nothing was any better than another brand. So he said, I'm going to do it myself because there has to be something better. And so PXG was born out of a quest to find something that's better and special and different than everything else in the marketplace. So that's kind of how we started. But a little bit about my background. So I used to play golf on the PGA Tour. I played for about 10 years. I was lucky enough to win one event in those 10 years. It was the Bay Hill Invitational, which is a pretty special event for me, to be perfectly honest, because I grew up in Western Pennsylvania where Arnold Palmer grew up. So, Mount Pleasant was about 10 miles away from Latrobe. He was my hero. And to be able to play at that level and actually win his event, and I won in a very special way. I got into a playoff with a guy named Greg Norman, who is
a guy.
Well, hey, I'm realistic about who I am and what I do. And the final round, I was paired with Greg and Sevi. And I stood on the first tee and I said, I am way out of my league right here. So, but it ended up, it was a good day for me, and I went into a playoff, and Greg 3-putted the first playoff hole. So I can't actually say I won the tournament. I can say that Greg kind of lost the tournament and gave it to me. So thanks, Greg. I appreciate you. But so that's a little bit about my career. And look, you guys are all business people, so I know we all kind of have the same mentality. And I do the same thing here with golf equipment. You have a club. How can you make it better? Well, I did that with my playing career. I was pretty good. But how can you get better? And so I made a mistake of trying to really work on my golf swing rather than learn how to manage my game a little bit better. And one thing led to another. Before I knew it, I had lost my card, my playing privileges on the PGA Tour. And so I needed a job, and I ended up going to work for Ping. I was with that company for 23 years. In that interim, I met Bob. We became friends. And Bob had a real passion for not only the game of golf, but the equipment side of things. And he wanted to start this venture. And so that's how PXG started. But there's a little bit of my background, kind of like where I'm at in my career. I love doing what I do. I'm going to tell you this, is that if you're not playing golf for a living, what I do is the next best thing. Trust me, it's fun. Every day is a challenge. You're always trying to make something better. And, Chris, I heard, you say it, or Josh, excuse me, it's all about making somebody enjoy the game a little bit more. And when we can bring that to the table and golfers are enjoying the game more, then that's a win for all of us, right? That's what we're striving to do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting, since you've been with the company since its inception, I think PXG is one of the brands that has evolved the most since 2013 as well. It's gone from this really high-end luxury kind of boutique brand to a company that offers everything across the board at various price ranges to suit so many different golfers. So,
Oh yeah.
see, that's because I can remember when the first set of PXG irons came out, and they were what, $400 or $500 a piece or something like that, and it was a
They were
rarity to
350
see
a
them.
club.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now they're everywhere, which is
Yeah.
really cool to see. And I think like the 0211 series, that's been one of a great, I don't want to say an entry level driver, but it's been a very high performing driver at a price point that is very accessible for a lot of people.
Sure. And so if I can expound on that, when Bob is most definitely one of the best marketing people on the face of the earth, right? And when we first talked, he said, we're going to need to create this brand, and it has to be different. People they're going to really want to get these golf clubs. And so that was his idea, to create something new and special. And he goes, it's going to be up to you and Brad Schweigert is, our chief product officer here. And he says, it can be up to you and Brad to create something special that people are going to want. And, when we find that, then we'll introduce it to the marketplace. But he wanted to come in on the high end. Now, one thing I have to say, yeah, our clubs were expensive, when we first started, but to do all the process that was involved in making that club head when we first started, it was really expensive, Jamie. I mean, a forged head, then there was a milling operation done on the inside to make sure all the walls were all the correct thickness. Once we would weld face on, and it was a different material than the body. Then we filled it with an elastomer, and when you added it all up, it was super expensive to make it. Plus all the little weights at the bottom. You can imagine all the milling involved to put those ports in for those weights, and then the weights themselves were different alloys depending on where they lived in the club head. So we had tungsten weights that lived out on the toe side, titanium weights that lived in the heel side. And it was like, holy cow, this thing is really pricey. And Bob's like, no problem, because that's kind of where he wanted to go with it. And here's an interesting story. We had probably been a year into selling golf clubs, and I'm standing in line at a McDonald's, and right next to me in line, right, is this kid. He's probably like 17 years old. He is decked out head to toe in fluorescent orange. So you knew he was a Ricky Fowler fan. And he looks over and he sees a PXG on my shirt, and he goes, oh my gosh, PXGs. He goes, I'm saving up for a set of those right now. So that was the kind of impact we made coming into the market. And, I have to credit Bob to all of that, because he created that brand that people really strive to get to, but not everybody could afford them there. And, now we have clubs that are at all different price levels. So we can bring so many different people and demographics into this brand, should they so desire to get there, because our technology is a little similar regardless of what price point you're looking at, but some of the manufacturing is different. And that's what lends itself to these different price points. It gets just more expensive to make it a certain way.
For sure. I can only imagine the initial startup costs, what they would be. And I think that's also, it's part of the story of PXG and how you guys have progressed throughout the years. And I think it is also what has separated you guys from being I'll say a traditional DTC company. I know PXG is sometimes put into that category, but you guys are kind of in between. You're not a DTC because you have your own stores and everything like that. And
we're a little bit of both of that, right, Jamie?
Yeah. It's a very you guys live in a very special spot within the golfing market. It's not so much a question.
As far as like what you're saying, I really like that. I mean, we are a little bit of direct to consumer.
Yeah.
We have our own stores, and then we have partners that we deal with as well. Like I know you guys come out and you use some Cool Clubs, right? Well, Cool Clubs is one of our partners. Yep. And, so we have a nice range of distribution with all those different entities. So I think it gives people access to our golf equipment in a little different way than what it has been traditionally, right? So, the big box retailers, most people want to go there because they can see all the different brands, and that's great. But with PXG, we'd like to try to control the environment a little bit better than what the retailers, the big box retailers do. And so that's why we chose to go down the road of, doing our own stores. And the partners that we have are all super high-end, fitters as far as golf equipment is concerned. And if you are a consumer who wants to buy direct, we do have lines. You can call in and talk with one of our fitters before you make any of your purchasing decisions, and they'll work you through as best they can to get you very close to the clubs you're going to need. So we have a really nice system that I think is lending itself well to allowing customers to get what they need.
For sure. I have another question, but we have a few hands raised here, so let's get to a few of the people who called in. So,
Great.
Bill, why don't you fire away there?
Sure. First, as a former Marine officer, thank you for the military discount.
Absolutely.
It's a very meaningful one. You were talking about the marketing and kind of the lineage of the company, and I actually think you're extending it, right? So you're taking this technology forward play and uniqueness, right? Boutique. And then now you're saying the fitting and come in and get a fitting, compare your stuff against our existing. And if we don't beat it, we'll actually give you money. And that's a very bold strategy to actually cut somebody a check, right? If you lose that battle. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of that? Is that a marketing campaign, or is it just so much confidence in the technology, or is it a combination of the fitting and everything else?
Yeah. So where that really came from is, when we first started, we were known as an irons company, right? So, and the irons were great, well received. And then we started to move into drivers. And look, I've been playing golf a long time. So when I hit a club, I'm not saying this egotistically, I know if it works or it doesn't work, right? And at this point in time, virtually all of the major OEMs are making good golf equipment. We feel like ours is a little better, but everybody's making good stuff. Well, our driver, when it first came into the marketplace, it was not that well received. Everybody's like, oh, this or that. Meanwhile, we had tour players using it and they were winning. So we knew that it worked just fine. And, okay, well, let's make a next generation. Okay. So, but it's hard to, once you start with a reputation, it's hard to get out of that reputation. Everybody, when they look at products, they're like, oh, I'd rather get a TaylorMade, or I'd rather get a Ping or a Callaway. They weren't looking at PXG. They're buying PXG irons, but they were, because of the initial impact of the driver, it for whatever reason wasn't well received. So we did like 3 generations. Finally went, we got to get people to hit it. It's good. So now you put your money where the mouth is, right? So that's how it kind of started. So we issued a challenge. Bring your driver in, hit it against our driver. If we win, great. If you win, we're going to pay you $100. We won 98% of the time. Think about that. That's against all other brands. I mean, that's pretty heady stuff, to be honest with you. But even with that, even with our tour players, these guys are so reluctant to do anything. I'm like, Mamma mia, what are you guys doing?
Well, I think it also goes to the fitting experience too, because I've gone and there was a fitting at a local group, and having somebody who genuinely knows what they're doing, you're not walking in and buying something off the rack. I mean, I've done it several times, and it never really helps me. And then you go get fit once, and you're like, oh my God, what a difference.
I could not agree with you more, Matt. Look, I'll say it like this. No, and I heard it said this way before. You can go out and buy the most expensive pair of shoes on earth. If they don't fit your feet, you hate them. And a little bit of that holds true, right, with golf equipment. I mean, if it doesn't fit your swing style, your angle of attack, your swing speed, your strength equivalent, you're going to struggle with that club. So by all means, no matter, I'm hoping everybody buys PXG, but no matter what brand you end up with, please go get fit. And now I will say this too, is once you get fit, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Our tour staff, it drives me crazy. These guys are like, yeah, I think, can we switch that swing weight like a half a point? And I'm going, are you kidding me? Or whatever it's going to be, the lie angle, a quarter of a degree. Nobody's that good. I'm sorry, but once you get fit, we had like this young college guy in here about 2 months ago. He's a really good player and hitting our stuff. And his dad was with him. And I said, listen, we'd love for you to play our stuff. Whatever brand you end up representing, I'm just going to tell this to you. Get fit and then forget about it, because you are the ultimate control of that golf ball, not the club. But I see too many professionals, and I was telling them this, I see too many professionals that they could probably be winning 4 or 5 times a year. As far as I'm concerned, they're that good, but they're so caught up in the minutia, all these numbers. They're not playing golf. They're playing TrackMan. It's just like, holy cow. But anyway,
I heard a funny story. I heard a funny story. I think it was about Wyndham Clark, who actually changes his loft and lie angle from event to event, depending on how he's swinging, which is just mind-boggling to me. But I think something that's kind of been touched on a little bit, but I'd love to flesh out a little bit more, is the PXG fitting experience. We've obviously had a few, I think 10 people go through the fitting experience through form testing, and it's been some of my favorite parts of the review so far have been their elation to the fitting experience and how it felt very grand.
Yeah.
Was that just something that came naturally, or was it something that was very purposeful?
Well, it's purposeful, number one, but that comes from Bob, because as an entrepreneur, he demands perfection. Okay. So he likes things and people to be treated in a certain way, just the way he would want to be treated. So he creates the environment that allows people to come in and experience the same thing in the same way that he would want to experience that. I mean, let's face it, billionaires, okay, because Bob's a billionaire, they expect a certain level of, treatment wherever they go. And so he wants to extend that to every customer that comes into PXG. So, Josh, you were able to get fit. I mean, I'm assuming that, you had a nice experience there, but we hire guys that are very well versed in golf equipment, in golf itself, in golfing, and they are able to read the customer very well, understand the personality that's coming in, and then you look at their swing style, swing types, they know right where to fit them and get the best result at the end of the day, because that's what we're looking for as golfers. We want a little bit better performance than when we walked in. It's kind of like taking a lesson, right? If you're not hitting it very good, when you go see a pro, you don't want to walk out of there hitting it worse, right? So,
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember I had a dear friend who was a teacher. This guy's name was Manuel Delatorre, and Manuel was kind of an old timer, not a TrackMan guy, but he was teaching professionals how to teach. And he had this group of about 25 guys that he was, working with. And he said, listen, I'm just going to tell you right now, if someone comes in for a lesson and they don't walk away hitting it better than when they walked in, you have failed. So that's not what we're after. And, he had his own style of teaching, but same philosophy with the fitting at clubs. When you come in and you get fit, it's got to be a little bit better. Otherwise, why change, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jeff, you fire away with your question there.
It wasn't so much a question as a story I think Mike will appreciate. Start of 2023, I had been out of golf for 20 years. decided I wanted to get back into it. My clubs were older than my son. He's 34 now. So I decided to go get fitted. Now, I didn't go to a PXG fitting location, but I went through the process and he put me on TaylorMade Stealth fairway woods. Well, I was buying clubs as I could afford them, and the Stealth 7 wood was the last item on the list. And by the time I got down to that, TaylorMade had run out of 7 woods. So I took those specs and ordered a PXG 7 wood. And now it's pretty much my favorite club in the entire bag.
Yeah. Well, like I said, everybody makes nice equipment. Okay. So I wouldn't ever badmouth anybody, but I'm biased, but I've been doing this a long time. And, I just feel that PXG makes the best stuff that you can buy out there. But Matt, to your point, you have to be fit for it to get the real benefit out of it. So, if anybody's in the market for new golf clubs, strongly recommend you at least try the PXGs. And occasionally somebody will ask me a question. I said, "Are you ready to buy new clubs?" And they said, "Well, no, I just got a set last year." I said, "Do not hit PXGs." And they said, "What?" And I said, "If you hit them, you're going to want them. And then you'll have to buy a new set." So anyway, I feel pretty strongly about it. We make great stuff. So, if anybody's in the market for new clubs, at least give the PXGs a try. You'll love it.
Mike, what are you playing right now?
Right now I've got the Gen 7 Ps in my bag. I love it. Black Ops driver, 9 degrees. I have a new KBS prototype shaft. I have a dear friend that works for KBS, and it's a new Cat 4 shaft that they have out. I love that. And so I play all the Black Ops woods, the driver, 3 wood, 2 hybrids, Gen 7, 5-iron down through the wedge. And then I play the new Sugar Daddy 3s. I do a 50, 54, and a 60.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what do you think is the most underrated club that PXG makes?
For sure, our driver.
Yep.
Yeah, the Black Ops driver is absolutely tremendous. And I won't mention a name. We just had a tour, one of our staff players out here who hasn't been using our driver, but he came out to specifically work with the driver. I went out and watched him play probably 12 holes, 2 balls with a PXG driver, 2 balls with a different driver. At the end of the day, because I wrote down, fairways, hit, miss, who won the distance thing. They're both good. And you're always at the mercy when you're testing with a human being of, did you hit it on the screws or not? All right. So, but after 12 holes, I gave the PXG a definite win on distance. And it was a definite win on basically, the dispersion. He had a comment that when he set it down, he said it looks just a little tiny bit more closed than what he wants. And I totally get that, because and so he wouldn't make a switch just for that reason. But performance wise was like fabulous. So trying to dial in a look and then get the right loft so it's perfect for launch conditions where, these guys all look at the numbers on the ball speed. And if you don't have the actual loft for the right launch, you start to lose on the ball speed equation. And then anyway, all about the numbers of the launch conditions. And it's like you're pulling your hair out and it's like, hey, we need another 0.3 of a degree over here. At the end of the day, I thought that he could use either driver and go win a tournament. But, because of it looked a tiny bit shut. And as a player, I kind of got that. I'm like, yeah, if it doesn't look right to start with, then it's almost a non-starter from there. For me, it has to look perfect. And then let's see if we can make it fly the way we want to make it fly. So, and it's funny talking about fitting, but when people ask me about getting fit for irons, and I said, listen, the first thing I would do is I'd lay out all the models we have available. Look down at it, get it behind the ball. Which one do you like? Because you got to look at that. once you like the look of the head, our fitters will do the very best job to make sure that you're fit properly and give you the best experience with that model. So that's kind of my own personal philosophy. You know, I think it has to look right before you get fit for it.
I hit the 317 CBs.
Yeah. Oh, great club. I love it.
And it was one of those moments where I very nearly left much poorer, because was honestly only there to try the Black Ops and the Woods, because that's really where I needed help in my bag. I was pretty comfortable with my irons.
Yeah.
And I ended up hitting every iron. Like I went P, I went
Yeah.
T, I went the 317s, I went the CB, the S, like, and I couldn't get over how just the look was pretty seamless between the ST, the CB, the T. That I really, it was such a nice surprise. And then hitting them was just like a completely different experience. It was like, oh,
Right.
okay.
So you tried the Black Ops. So
I
tell
did
me
this.
about your experience.
So I was in a Gen 5 XF, and the sound was so much better with the Black Ops.
Yeah.
Like night and day. The only difference is the shaft that I have an all fit adapter on, and so I couldn't use the shaft that I've kind of grown to love.
Got it.
And so I did end up hitting the Black Ops with a Ventus, which was ridiculous. I mean, a ridiculous combo. But I have a fairly limited golf budget, so I had to give it back and cry a little bit as I handed it back.
Dang it!
But it was a spectacular. Yeah, it was. The sound was what for me was the most noticeable difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fantastic.
Nice. Good.
So I
Did you get a chance to try the? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, no. Finish your story. You're the star.
I was just going to ask Matt if you had a chance to try the Black Ops irons while you were in there trying all that experience.
No, I did try the Z, the crazy hybrid iron. Did I have the name right? Is it the Z?
Yes, it's the Z. So
and the fitter he literally said, "Hey, just to make yourself laugh, pick that club up and hit it."
Oh yeah.
And it was a rocket launcher. Like it's just the easiest
so
thing
it's
I've
like
ever hit.
straight up.
Oh my God. It was incredible. But no, I can't remember if he didn't have the Black Ops irons yet, or
Right.
I think it was before they were out.
I think the irons had not come out, but it was just in fact, it was just he had O211s, and then he had the main set. So
okay, great.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
So
yeah, the O211Z iron, you know, it's geared for a new golfer, and
it was really easy to hit.
It was so easy to hit, and that's the goal with that club, right? So it's a little more lofted than some of our other irons, because when you start golf, if you can't hit the ball in the air, it's so frustrating. It's just not any fun.
Yeah.
And remember that at the end of the day, golf, we want it to be fun. I kind of liken it to skiing, where if you go skiing and the first time you're on your butt all day long going down the slopes, probably be your last time skiing, right? So if you have golf clubs like super game improvement style clubs, but they're so strong lofted that you just struggle to hit them in the air, what's the point? You know, I mean, you golf is played in the air most of the time. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm over at the UK, they played on the ground a little bit more than we do here. So, but if you can't get it airborne, it's frustrating.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How important was it for PXG to get tour involvement and have tour players validate the clubs that you guys were playing?
And Jamie, that's a great question. And that was one of the first conversations I had with Bob when, he wanted to start down this road. And I said, listen, we are going to have a tour staff. And those tour players are going to have to buy into the technology and the brand, and they're going to have to play our stuff. They're going to have to win. If they don't win with your brand, then you don't have the credibility and the validation that gives the consumer permission to buy your product. And, so we ended up getting a nice early staff of tour players, good players. They played pretty much everything, right? Like 14 clubs. I mean, James Hahn won, early on. Billy Horschel won using all of our stuff. Billy Horschel, by the way, was our biggest cheerleader ever. I love that guy. He's just amazing. But, and I said that, I'm like, if you can create cool clubs and all the whole 9 yards, but if nobody at that level is using them, and even if they are using them but don't win, it's going to be a very, very difficult sell at the consumer level. And so, we got our staff we had a great staff early on, and the guys won tournaments, and, all of a sudden PXG was vaulted into the limelight, and one thing led to another. Here we are, right? The company just keeps growing and growing. And yeah, so you're right. You have to have that validation, and that gives your brand credibility. And what I always like to say, and I said it earlier, is that gives the consumer permission to buy your product. So, yeah.
It's I love the way that you put that. That's very, it makes sense. It's just a lot of words.
It's just truth, Jamie. I like truth,
Bill has a question. What is the most exciting technology PXG has introduced?
Well, absolutely. The most exciting technology that we've had has been, our hollow body irons, and filled with polymer. And look, when Brad and I first started down this road, we're not chemists. Brad's a mechanical engineer, and I'm not even an engineer, right? I'm a golfer. But when we started with this hollow body product, it was a big experiment to find how thin we can make the face, because we know that, a thinner face, when you impact it, it's going to flex. It's going to like store energy and release energy. So we needed to get some distance going as far. And let me back up for 1 second. So the reason we went down this road was our original marching orders from Bob. When we had a 1-year non-compete. When our non-compete was up, Bob called Brad and I into the office, and he said, "Okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to focus on irons, and here's what I'm looking for." Now, I have to preface this with, when I first met Bob loved blade irons. I mean, he just, he was a Miura guy. And so he's like, "Okay," he said, "I want an iron that looks like a blade, but it has to be more forgiving than a cavity back." And I got my little notepad, I'm like, "Okay, anything else?" He goes, "Yes, it has to go further than anything in the marketplace, but you can't make the loft stronger." "Okay. Has to feel better than any golf club I've ever hit." And I'm like, "There's some pretty strong marching orders here, Bob." And he goes, "We're not done yet." He said, "I need a club that looks different than everything else out there, and it cannot be mistaken for any other golf club." Okay. So those were our initial marching orders. When we started to look at what we can do to achieve all of these things, right, it just was a hollow body product, because when it's hollow body, you can put polymers on the inside. You can thin out the face, so you can get a face that flexes, stores energy, returns it into the system. You get ball speed, you get distance. But there was a lot of learnings, along the way. How thin can you go with the face? What type of polymers can we put in there? The first polymer we used was a thermoplastic elastomer. And the only reason we were putting it inside the heads, we wanted to dampen the sound. So when you hit it, felt really solid, right? And it had this great crisp sound. We didn't have any idea that there were polymers out there that had great resilience, right? So we knew that we could get a certain durometer of the polymer, but to be honest, we kind of lucked out on our first one with this TPE. It had a great durometer to it, and it had really good, sound enhancing capability. So if you took a ball of this polymer and just dropped it on the floor, it sucked up all the energy. It literally stuck on the floor. It looked like you dropped a pillow down there. But it had just the right density we were looking for. and the durometer. So the hardness of the material was just right so that the face could move a little bit, but not move too much and fail, because we kept shooting for a thinner and thinner face. So without a doubt, the most exciting technology was the hollow body, but then the learnings that came with that. How thin can we go with the face? And when we start getting into all the different polymers, like our Gen 7 right now with the, the quantum core polymer, oh my gosh, if I took a ball of that and dropped it on the floor and then the TPE sticks on the floor, that the resilience of our quantum core, it bounces almost as high as where you started. So it's literally almost like super ball material on the inside. It's it stores the energy. The face moves. This face is like a spring, right? So it's loading, but the polymer itself now adds it doesn't take anything out of the system. It itself gets compressed and stores energy, and then it can rebound back into the ball. And that's why, with Gen 7, we had our biggest distance gain of any gen to gen introduction since PXG's inception. So really good stuff as far as the polymer is concerned. But, those are the learnings you have over the years, right? So we've been doing this for 10 years. And we're and the learnings aren't over, trust me. So, and you guys know this, kind of like golf. It's like, how good are you? Well, I'm a 5 handicap. Well, the learnings aren't over, buddy.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Let's run through some questions. Leela asked, didn't PXG show up on tour before the company ever sold a club in the bag of an unpaid player? So did PXG
ever show up on tour?
Your clubs. So they actually,
before they sold a club, basically.
yeah, before you even sold any clubs, were any tour players using them?
Well, you know what? Here's the deal. And one of our first tour players to adopt the PXG was Ryan Moore. So I knew Ryan, and Brad knew Ryan from back at our days at Ping, because he was kind of a Ping guy. So we had a relationship with Ryan. We knew our clubs were good. We didn't know how good they were. So before we ever start selling anything, Ryan was down here in town. We call him, hey, can you come and hit some clubs for us? We think it's pretty special. He came over, hit the clubs. He goes, they're phenomenal. I want to use them. And we're like, we don't even have them okayed by the USGA yet. We literally had 25 sets of first article prototypes. So he's like, they are absolutely phenomenal. And we were just developing a driver, right? So he hit the driver and he goes, oh my gosh, the best driver ever. He goes, I have to use these clubs. And so Brad and I were like, we're trying to, do groove scans, make sure the grooves are all conforming and get this stuff off to the USGA so he could go out and use them. So Ryan Moore was an early adopter before we started selling anything, and he bought into it, loved it.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Don asked the question, any thoughts about glass putters?
Glass putters?
Yes. He says it's the best that he's ever felt before.
I haven't ever, thought about putting glass or making a putter out of glass. Be pretty, don't drop it. I can recall kind of back in my day when we had wood clubs, there were woods that had little glass inserts in the face. They didn't seem to perform any better than the plastic, inserts that we used to put in there. I have no thoughts of making a glass putter at this point.
There we go.
Yeah, it'd be interesting though.
Josh, fire away.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed with testing is you don't have the shots that just spray 10 yards further than what you expect. However, on the opposite end, what I've noticed is mishits. If you slightly toe or slightly heel, the distance lost has been next to nothing compared to a lot of other clubs I've hit.
Well, again, with Gen 7, Josh, one of the things we did is we took all the little screws out of the back of the club. Now, the screws were nice. It was a great aesthetic thing, and they were put in there for, some mechanical properties. It did help and enhance slightly the MOI of the club. But if you got rid of those, right, you have now quite a bit of mass you can reposition in the club head to help drive up MOI. So two things with Gen 7 is, number one, you don't see on the inside of the club, there's on the P iron, it's a 20-gram slug of tungsten that lives in the very extreme toe, 15 grams on the XP iron. And we also have in the back of the club a titanium insert that takes out some more mass from the center of the club. We use that to actually screw our weight in for our calibration on swing weighting. So all things told, you know what, here, let me take a quick look. I'll give you just let's see. So pretty good stuff. And like when you go from gen to gen to try to increase the MOI without actually changing the size of the club head, the easiest way to drive up forgiveness or MOI, you know, moment of inertia, is just make your club head bigger from heel to toe, right? So that means it's going to take more force to twist this thing offline. The other way is try to reposition the mass more efficiently within a given space so that it drives up MOI. So if you can improve, you know, 1% to 1.5% from model to model without making it bigger, pretty good stuff, you know. So from Gen 6 to Gen 7, we have a 3%, which is really doggone nice, increase in MOI, which lends itself to what people experience when you go out and hit it. Now we do our testing on a robot, so we do, you know, player testing as well. But when we really look at data, because the robot doesn't change, you know, it makes the same swing every time. So we feel like the data can be relied on a little bit better. From Gen 6 to Gen 7 on the XP, there's a 16% improvement in dispersion pattern. So, you know, when you hit high toe, heel, you know, low kind of a thing, we take a statistical ellipse of all those mishits and do a you know, cross-sectional area, right? So 16% smaller with the XP. With the P iron, we were able to go 33% smaller than the Gen 6. So already a very forgiving club, now like crazy, you know, forgiving. Good for the consumer, bad for me, because I got to try to improve on that, you know, for the next gen. And it's like, now what?
Well, then y'all are already at the thinnest you can possibly go, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. We are up against it as far as the COR is concerned. So coefficient of restitution, we're at the USGA limit. And the way that works is, you know, there's a CT test, characteristic time, that you can do, you know, with your drivers, and we do with irons, but the irons far exceed the CT. Okay, the CT limit is like 257 microseconds, and the irons just, it's way above that. So what happens with the USGA is when you with a wood, they just go, oh, it's non-conforming. But with an iron, if you're above it, they then go and do a COR test, so coefficient of restitution. And you guys all know what this is, but just for your viewers, in a nutshell, it's like if you threw a ball into the wall at 100 miles an hour and it came back at you at 100 miles an hour, you would have a ratio of 1, right? The limit of COR at the USGA level is 0.83. So if you threw it in at 100, it can't come back any faster than 83. Well, when you do a COR test, you have to make an exception for the environment that particular day, the ball you're using. So the way the USGA sets up their test is you have a plate that they give you, and you shoot a ball into it and it returns, and then you get a number. So the plate typically lives at about 837, 836, somewhere in that range. And then they give you a margin of error of 8. So our clubs live right at the limit. They're above 0.83. So on the irons, the plate that we use the day that we do the testing, right, it was reading out, I'm going to say it's like, let me take a quick look here. Yeah, so the day we did our testing, right, so the plate was living at about 835, and our clubs were at 843. So it's on the limit, right? So it was 835 plus 8. And the reason you have to do the plate is depending on what golf ball you use and you're shooting it into the plate, it could yield a different number, you know.
Yes.
And then when I talk about environment, you know, if temperature's a little warmer, cooler, you guys do all this testing, you know this, you know, if it's a little warmer, cooler, you could get a little different result, you know. So it's all relative to the day that you do the testing, but the Gen 7 is on the limit. It's 843, our coefficient of restitution. You cannot go any faster. And again, that's a dilemma for me now as a designer. It's like, now what? I'm still at a little bit of a quandary where I'm going to go next gen. So, but I do have a couple of cards.
I think you answered your own question though. You just make it the size of a shoe.
Well,
And then it won't twist, and it'll go 400 yards. It's fine.
Matt, I like your thinking, you know, but then I have to harken back to the first thing I would recommend in a fitting is what size head do you like to look at? You know, if everybody liked the bigger club head, then great. And that's kind of where we are, to be honest with you, Matt, with like our Black Ops iron.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. I mean, it is. But it's a little bigger look, right? So you set it down. It's like, are you comfortable with that? If you are, it's probably your baby, you know, because it really.
We like to use the word chonky.
Chonky.
Yeah, it's a little chonky. It's not a bad thing. It's just you know, if that's what you're looking for, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
We're going to move into Hayes' question next.
Hey, first of all, I always try to thank anyone associated with PXG for the Heroes program. Thank you very much. I appreciate the sentiment behind that.
Thank you, Bob, right? And thank you, Hero.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Josh kind of stole my thunder on the irons. I'm testing the Gen 7s too. And the distance retention on off-center strikes is unbelievable.
It really
is. I did also pick up some Sugar Daddy 3 wedges.
Yeah.
The spin is incredible. It's consistent with everything. But how have you made that wedge that impossibly soft? I mean, I know it's 3 times forged, but I mean, there must be mixed with bald eagle tears or something like that, because it's amazing.
It's funny you say that. I just had a friend hitting some of the new wedges. And he goes, honestly, it's the best feeling wedge that I've ever hit. And I call him a friend, and he's been using Titleist wedges. So, you know, but hey, you know, Vokey's done a great job out there, but he hit the new wedges. He says best feeling wedge. And after watching the pitch shots around the green and the action of the ball and the way he can control trajectory and spin, and that all has to do with grooves. You know this stuff. You're obviously probably a pretty good wedge player. You know, if you can't control your trajectory and how it's going to check and react, then come on, Jamie, leave it alone there. You know, pitching a ball from 30 or 40 yards off the green, if you can't control those things, it's not fun. You know, if it's coming up in the air a little bit high and you know, it lands and you think it's going to give a little check and it releases, all of a sudden you got a 20-foot putt instead of a 2-footer. Huge difference. So we have some amazing grooves that live on those clubs, and we do it a little bit differently than some of our competitors. You know, a lot of guys have gone with more grooves on the face, but they have to go to a very, very narrow groove to make that happen. And the logic of that is that maybe you can get one more groove edge acting on the cover of the ball to control that trajectory and spin. Well, we go down a little bit different road. We have a much wider groove. And the reason we like a wider groove is when you hit those shots, the ball can actually penetrate deeper down into the groove, which means that the cover of the ball enacts with the edge of the groove more than a narrow groove. So you actually have more control with a wider groove. Now, we have to space them out a little bit more. So I know some of our competitors put their groove on it at like spacing of about 126 thou. We used to live at 140 thou. We brought it into 134, but we use our same groove that we used on our Sugar Daddy 2s. We just started to work with our supplier and get our tolerancing much, much tighter so that you can still put that groove on the face of the club and not go over the USGA limit. So a lot of the stuff that you're able to do in in design has to do with manufacturing. You know, how good can you manufacture the club? How consistent can you do it? But again, at the end of the day, then it all adds up into cost. So with that particular wedge, there's enough room, you know, because it's pretty pricey wedge being a fully milled product. There's enough room there to make sure that you can give the ultimate in design at that price point.
Awesome. I'm going to kind of tie in two questions here at once, and then we'll get to Tyler's. So one of our 4 members, are you guys considering a mini driver? It seems to be a trending topic.
We have a mini driver right now out played by some of our staff players. We're calling it yeah. Go ahead.
I think
I'm sorry, I thought I heard somebody. Yeah, so we do have one now being tested by our tour players, probably going to be offered in the very near future because we've had some nice success with it out there. But yeah, it seems to be a trend, especially at the highest level. You know, a lot of guys, they hit it so far now that they need a little bit smaller looking driver that spins a little bit more than their typical driver for control, but they don't necessarily use it off of the ground very often. So a bigger, taller face lends itself to their particular needs because, you know, on a tight hole where instead of trying to hit it 350, you know, they only need to hit it 300. So they use the mini driver. Yeah. Poor guys, you know. So yes, in other words, we do have one now. It's being tested out at the tour level and well received. So we'll probably be offering that in the very, very near future.
We'll be on the lookout for it. Great question, by the way. Tyler, let's go to yours and then we'll go to my other one there.
Hey, Mike, I'm actually we work together. I'm the mobile fitter for Idaho and Montana. My dad was on watching this and he's like, hey, check this out with Mike Nicolette. I'm like, oh, awesome. I want to say hi. And
that's so good.
Question. But I wanted to say first off, like when you were explaining our fitting experience, like I'm a golf professional as well. I taught for a living before. I was a PXG staffer in Vegas before I took the job fit for us. But I love it. It's the best company to work for. And it's cool because like I'm getting the same result with my players. I'm just doing a different way to get the answer, building it instead of fixing them mechanically.
Yeah.
But a couple questions I wanted to ask you. Why did we go to just the full face groove in the BP and the Sugar Daddy 3s versus staying full face groove in the 2s?
Yeah. So I got some feedback from, you know, players at the highest level, you know, PGA Tour, LPGA Tour. Some folks just don't prefer the full face grooves, and some people do. So we decided to try to offer both, you know. So we have our I don't want to call it normal, but our standard length groove on a more traditional shaped head. And then we put the full face grooves on a more modern shaped head, if you will. So a high toe looking club head. And personally, I think the full face grooves lend itself more to that size and style and shape of club head than, you know, traditional length grooves. So if I went with a traditional club head and put full length grooves on it, it for whatever, it makes the whole thing optographically look too small.
Right.
You know, so we ended up, you know, just saying, you know, let's try both and see where it goes. And so here we are.
Yeah, because I'm still playing the 2s. I love the full face groove, like with like around the bunker when I'm hitting a flop shot when you're cutting across it and then you get that ball towards the toe. But when I tested out the new 3s at my hub in Boise here, I was backing it up on a fairway length on like a 50-yard pitch shot. And I'm like, oh gosh, these have some zip. But I wanted to talk real quick about the Allen. So I've been a blade guy my whole life, played brand ever since I was a staffer and an employee. Been very traditional my whole life. Oh my God, that is unreal how it's the most stable putter I've ever put in my hands. Like
100%.
I got actually won the contest for August, so I got one coming. So
way to go.
excited to get that in my hands. But like it's unbelievable. And I loved Brad's video rebuttal that he did against the competition that he put out a few weeks before.
Right. You know,
And
go ahead.
come out blade version of that, of the Zero Torque.
You know, we're always working on new things here. So I don't want to spill the beads too soon, but you know, we're always looking at different styles of heads. That's obviously a technology that is now well received across all levels of play. And Tyler, I mean, let's face it, that the Allen putter, we're selling them like hotcakes. So people love it because it's literally the first time they've had an option of a putter similar but different to the Lab. Okay, you know, if you wanted to do a Lab style putter, you had a couple of offerings, and you know, it very well received. You know, the Lab putter sold tons last year, so we wanted to do something similar but better. And you know, and if you watch Brad's video, you know, you'll see with a stable face where it stays pointing at the hole virtually all the time. It's a little different than the Lab. The Lab's more of a center gravity balanced design, and ours is not. It's very close, but it has a dynamic to it that keeps the face always pointing at the hole, and it's just fabulous. As far anybody that struggles with their putting should get one of these putters.
Yeah, I had a fitting this morning, and the gentleman came up, and he's actually using my one for my Matrix right now in a tournament this afternoon. But he goes, "Do you really need to fit me for this?" I'm like, "No, not really, because it stays stable to the arc of your stroke, and I just need to know length and maybe weight and what grip you want on it." But no, I don't. I said, "I'll go watch you hit a few," and like his start line was perfect, and it was awesome. I mean, it's my phone, like I've been with us now for 3 years, 2 years as a staffer before that, but like I've never had my phone ring as much for a product release as I have for the Allen putter. Yeah. I probably sold 20 in the first week.
No, I totally get it, Tyler. I totally get it. Yeah, it's great. The technology is amazing, and I'm not taking anything away from Lab. They have their own technology. And, you know, Sam Hahn, who I know, you know, Sam was, and I understand where he's coming from, because we're selling so many Allen putters. It's probably getting into their business. So he wanted to do something to, you know, try to circumvent that. So he came out with a video, but he was like, yeah, they're saying this, and it's, you know, it wasn't meant to be the same putter. We wanted something different, and we wanted it to be better, and we feel that it is. And the consumers are out there trying it, and based on the sales, I think they're finding out it's really, really nice.
And I just saw inventory, and it's
yeah.
I mean, we're moving the product, but I just wanted to say thank you to you and Brad for what you guys do for us, and because you're giving me the tools to make it better to pass that on to the consumer to be able to put it in their hands. And
yeah, great. And I'll say thank you to you, because, you know, sitting in my office here, I'm not selling one club. You know,
you're helping for you.
Yeah. Amen. It's a team, right? Good synergy.
It's like we don't see each other that often, but I have obviously feel like I've known you for years. But yeah, no, it's great PXG community for sure.
Great. Thanks, Tyler.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. Hayes, you had a question there?
No, I'm just going to pile on since the PXG Loves Fest. I've got an Allen fitting on the 10th, and that if that goes through, then that's 3 slots in the bag that aren't PXG. So you're almost taking over the whole bag.
It's coming, Hayes. It's coming.
Absolutely.
What do you have left?
I don't know how much time.
Driver and 2 fairways.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know how much time you have, Mike. If you're okay with running a little longer than an hour.
Yeah, it's fine. You know,
and I'm okay with
chat. I'm good chatting.
So one of the questions that we'll stick on the Allen for this, I think one of because I've seen both those videos from Lab and from PXG, and it's interesting because much like shafts, there's not really an industry standard for measuring things like torque, zero balance,
right,
like in all of these things. It's obvious that Lab has success with their putters in the way that they measure them as well. And there's probably some trade secrets that you can't get into, but I guess, how do you tell that story when this is a newer concept and there is no real industry standard for it?
Well, here, so hang on a second.
Yeah.
So I just happen to have my putter
There you go. Perfect.
in the office right now. I do some things because it's my putter. I struggle to see the face sometimes, so I Sharpie the face in silver.
Okay.
And then I put some alignment lines on the front side of it. These are racing stripe, lines. They're just pinstripe lines you get down at the auto store. So I just tape them on there because that's what I like.
Yeah.
But the balance of the putter and it is very unique in that that's the way it balances all the time. So if you spin it, right, see, it's always wants to come back to facing the target. And that is exactly the technology that we were looking for, because as you move this through space, it's always staying facing the actual arc. It's pure to the arc. So we named it the zero torque, but in fact, there's a tiny bit of torque involved to try to move it. If you have a center gravity balanced putter, if you go to move, it takes no effort at all to spin it. Okay. This still takes some effort, but it's so stable as you move it through space, the face is always staying pointed pure to that arc. And that's what we were looking for. And that's the technology we came up with. And it's a patented technology. So it's protected pretty well.
Well, and there's also the ball picker, which I know it's amazing how many people are so particular about that. And if you hadn't made the Allen with that, that would probably be like the biggest talking point. Well, I can't scoop the golf ball up. So when I was reading through it and I saw that, I was like, bravo, that was a good call on that.
It's so funny. I don't play golf very often. It's been a couple months, but I played this last weekend with a friend up in the mountains, and unfortunately I missed a putt, so, and he goes, that's good. So I reached out and poop, picked it. And he goes, let me see that. Yeah.
Anyway. So the other question I had is it has to do with release cycles. You have a lot of release cycles.
Sure.
So a lot of companies are on yearly or every 2 years. PXG doesn't really have that traditional release cycle. When you guys have a product that you think this is my understanding of it. When you have a product that you think is a leap forward and worth it to the market, you release it. If it's going to take longer, so be it. Is that just at the core of Bob's thinking is I need the best product in the hands of golfers and I'm not going to be satisfied until it's better?
Jamie, you just said it right there. Okay. That is definitely at the core of Bob's thinking is that, and because before PXG started, see, he went down that road, right? I'm hitting all the different clubs, all the different brands. I'm working with the guys at Cool Clubs. They're putting this shaft, that shaft in. And this is like not private, public knowledge. Okay. He was spending in the neighborhood of $250,000 a year on golf equipment. So he's like, and it's all the same. I need something better, right? So that's how PXG kind of started. But yes, we don't have, because we're not tied into that retail environment, okay, where you have a timeline that you're working and developing to. Bob's MO is more like, we have our Gen 7. We don't know when Gen 8's coming, but it needs to be better and significantly better than Gen 7. And so, the wheels start turning. And I mean, there's multiple times, I'm talking with Bob. I'm like, man, I don't know, Bob, I'm struggling right now. He said, this is a great Bob line. He goes, don't worry about it. He says, it'll bubble up, and eventually between Brad, myself, and Bob has great ideas, by the way, because he's tried so many different things. He's definitely part of our development team. He said, what if we do this? What if we do that? Yeah. Let's try it. But, when something happens and it's better, then we start to move forward in the development and start to then put a timeline in place. When can we get enough parts in-house that we can actually launch this? So the timeline doesn't start until the development is almost over. So
Okay.
that's a little different from, the company that I worked for in the past, where you had a date and you developed to the date. Now we develop, and once you find something better, the date starts. When can we introduce?
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's just a little
And-
different philosophy, but it's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, well, and I think there was a run, I'm going to say probably 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, where there were companies coming out with it was seemingly drivers every 6 months, and there was just this constant flow of new stuff in it. It it hurt the golfer. That's what happened.
And Jamie, in all fairness, we've launched some irons pretty quickly, to be perfectly honest, because we came up with something in a time frame. And Bob's like, "Well, this is so much better. We got to let it go." And we're like, "It's too soon." And he goes, "No, it's not. It's better." So,
Yeah.
we've gotten some pushback from consumers too. It's like, I just bought my irons. You guys are releasing new irons already, but I guess you're always going to hear that because, there's always the end of a life cycle of a product. And if you're buying at the end of that life cycle and here comes a new one, you're probably not the happiest customer on earth at that point. But there is no perfect entry date to market. It's like, that's why I like our philosophy. It's like, if something's better, let's get it to the consumer. He's going to enjoy it more. So that's where we live.
The other question I had, iron specific, was the Gen 6. I remember you guys had a lot of different color options and just different ways. Gen 7, you guys really reduced that. Was that just a minimalist thing? Was it?
So good question. With Gen 6, we had basically a chrome head and a black ballast.
Yes.
Okay. And then the reverse, we had a black club head with a chrome ballast. And some people love that and some people don't, so it became a little bit polarizing.
Yeah.
We never got pushback on if the entire head's chrome or if the entire head's black. Right. So we said, let's go ahead and what we did with the Gen 6 is we kind of reintroduced it, right? All chrome and all black. And then we just brought that same mentality into Gen 7. So you can get all chrome or all black. There's not a mix of like a half and half because Jamie, it just became a little bit polarizing. And so we live in the world of sales. You don't want to miss sales because of something like that. Nobody ever pushed back because the club head was all chrome. So that's why.
Yeah. And I'm a black fan. Like that's a nice darker finished iron that's definitely my my personal aesthetic.
Good. Well, again, we make it for everybody. So
well, and it's and I appreciate that there's left-handed clubs available. So that's something that as a lefty I look for. And it's nice that left-handed clubs are available through PXG. I think I know we're not the biggest market, but we're one that I think is important.
It's a great market, especially in Canada. And that's where did you grow up in Canada?
Yeah, I grew up in Kelowna, so Western, and then I lived out in Halifax for 10 years before moving this side. But something like 35% of golfers in Canada are left-handed.
Right.
Yeah, or play left-handed.
Okay.
And I guess the last question I have, one of the big talking points with iron specifically over the last couple of years across many companies is sole design and turf interaction. I saw a little bit on that for the Gen 7s, but it didn't seem to be one of the major talking points. It seemed to be focused on other areas. What have you guys done to, I guess, enhance the turf interaction with the Gen 7s?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, Jamie, we didn't enhance it at all. And the reason is we didn't need to. The soul of the club works great. And look, we're all golfers, right? So we all have a similar experience. You know, as you're coming down through impact, you want that club face to get onto the ball, no problem, but you want it up and out of the turf as smooth as possible. If you're not getting that, then there's some issue with the bounce. Now, look, I've been doing this a long time. Besides being a tour player for 10 years, and then, you know, I've been in club design for 30 plus years, you know, 23, 30 plus years now. It's scary, buddy. I have the soul design down. Trust me. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. And so at this point in time, you know, there's really not a huge difference in how the sole is going to, you know, get through the turf. So we've got all the bounce angles, the cambers from heel to toe, front to back, the lead edge angle, how tall is the lead edge, what combination of all of that needs to go into, you know, this club to make it work really well in the turf. So if you look at like our Black Ops irons, okay, and you look at our Gen 7 irons and you look at the specs, typically the Black Ops iron is going to read like their bounce is a little bit less. Well, you go, wow, that's interesting because that's a game improvement iron. But the sole is wider. And the sole is actually 1/4 of an inch wider than like our P iron, our Gen 7P. So when the sole goes wider and you have a certain angle of bounce, the longer and wider it is, the more bounce you have. So to make it play properly at a much wider size, you have to start to take some of the angle off so that it still gets through the ground easily, but it allows you to get on the ball without any effort. You know, if you have too much bounce and you start getting down onto the ball, it's hard to put the ball up in the middle of the face. There's too much bounce. If you don't have enough bounce, by the time you have balls on the face, the club's in the ground, it doesn't come out of the ground as smoothly as we'd like. So, you know, there's trade-offs there, but we've got it all worked out. So we haven't made any changes really from the sole design on Gen 7, you know, from Gen 6 to Gen 7. We've been doing really a nice job with all of our different clubs, whether it be, you know, the CBs that, you know, I heard Matt talking about earlier, and, you know, all the way to a wider sole Black Ops iron. So we've got the algorithm and the formula figured out. So no matter what the width of the sole is going to be, you're getting the right amount of bounce that gives you the best opportunity to put the club, you know, on the ball easily and let it get out of the turf smoothly.
Hey, when are the new 317s coming out?
Pardon me?
When are the 0317s, the new ones coming out? Come on, just tell me. Come on.
New 17s. Funny you asked that, but I can't say.
Yeah.
That's
the golden rule, that we don't ask those questions.
Expect an answer.
You know, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm sure we will have another follow-up one of these.
Yeah, I'd love to.
The not too distant future, because I still have probably a million other questions I could ask, and I just really appreciate you taking the hour and almost hour and a half, since we were on 10 minutes prior, to chat about all this, and really appreciate everyone who's hopped on the call, and just thank you so much for all your information that you've been able to provide, the stories, and also, you know, thank you for PXG for getting involved with the forum, and it's been a really, really fun experience.
Yeah, good, Jamie. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate the invite to come in and talk to you a little bit. I love the format. So, you know, if you need to do it again, let me know and we'll get together again, and I'll see if I can help you out.
We're here every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern. So even if you want to just
be a little more than I want,
you're welcome to.
All
Same
right.
link, everything. So thank you very much, Mike. And once again, thank you to PXG for getting this set up, and a lot of fun.
Okay, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.